My brother was the golden one, the pride, the favorite, the son who could do no wrong. I was the one she overlooked, the mistake she rarely defended. When life turned on her and my brother disappeared, I was the only one left. She didn't apologize. She didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. I cared for her because that's what family should do, even when love isn't fair. Hear this. I was 12 years old when I realized I was invisible in my own home. Not the kind of invisible where people don't see you. The kind where they look right through you, searching for someone else. My mother spent 30 years loving a son who would eventually abandon her, while I stood in the corner of every room, every moment, every memory, waiting for her to turn around and notice I was there too. This is the story of what happens when the forgotten child becomes the only one left. When the woman who chose everyone else suddenly has no choice but to need you. And the question that haunts you isn't whether you'll help her. It's whether you can forgive yourself for still wanting to. Welcome to my Reddit diaries, where every story reveals the unseen battles within families. Don't forget to subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I was 12 when I realized I was invisible in my own home. It was my birthday, or it was supposed to be. I came downstairs that morning expecting something, anything, the way kids do. Maybe pancakes with a candle stuck in the middle. Maybe a card on the kitchen table. Maybe just a hug and the words "Happy Birthday" whispered before the day got busy. Instead, I found my mother on the phone in the living room, her voice bright and animated in that way it only got when she talked about my brother Daniel. Oh, he's just incredible. Full academic scholarship to state. Can you believe it? I always knew he was special. I stood in the doorway holding my backpack, waiting for her to notice me. She didn't. She was too busy recounting every detail of Daniel's acceptance letter to my Aunt Linda, the same story she'd told 6 different people in the last 2 days. I walked to the kitchen and saw the calendar on the fridge. Today's date was circled in red marker, but not for me. Someone had written Daniel's college celebration dinner, 7 p.m. in my mother's careful handwriting. My birthday wasn't written anywhere. I made myself a bowl of cereal and ate it alone at the table. When my mother finally came into the kitchen, she kissed the top of my head without really looking at me and said, "Don't forget we're going out tonight. Wear something nice." I wanted to ask her if she knew what day it was. But I already knew the answer. So I just said, "Okay, Mom." That night we went to Daniel's favorite steakhouse. My mother wore the dress she saved for special occasions. Daniel showed up late because he'd been at practice, but when he walked in, her whole face transformed. She stood up and hugged him like he'd been gone for months instead of hours. We sat down and she ordered champagne even though Daniel was only 18. The waiter brought it anyway because my mother had that way of making people bend rules for her when it came to Daniel. She raised her glass and made a toast about how proud she was, how he was going to do amazing things, how she always knew he was destined for greatness. I sat there holding my water glass, waiting for her to remember. Waiting for someone to remember. Daniel caught my eye across the table and smirked. Not mean exactly. Just that look older brothers give when they know they've won something you didn't even know you were competing for. After dinner, my mother paid the bill and we walked to the car. I got in the back seat like always. Daniel rode up front. On the drive home, my mother reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, honey." I looked out the window at the streetlights passing by and thought about how I'd made honor roll that semester. Straight A's for the first time ever. I'd brought the report card home 3 weeks ago and left it on the kitchen counter. My mother had glanced at it and said, "That's great, sweetie," and then immediately asked Daniel about his upcoming playoff game. When we got home, I went straight to my room. About an hour later, there was a knock on my door. My mother came in holding a small grocery store cupcake with a single candle stuck in it. "I almost forgot," she said, smiling that distracted smile I knew so well. "Make a wish." She didn't sing. She didn't apologize. She just stood there holding the cupcake like it was enough. I blew out the candle and made a wish. Not for a party or presents. Just to be seen. To matter. To be someone's first thought instead of their afterthought. She kissed my forehead and left the room, and I sat there in the dark holding that cupcake, understanding for the first time that this was how it would always be. That pattern repeated itself for the next 16 years. Different occasions, same hierarchy. Daniel was the sun, and I was the planet that existed only to reflect his light. My mother didn't hate me. She just loved him more. And somehow that was worse. I learned to stop expecting things. Stopped telling her about my achievements. Stopped inviting her to events I knew she'd miss. I became the easy child. The one who didn't need anything. And the less I asked for, the less she gave. By the time I was 28, I'd built a life 2 hours away. Small apartment, freelance graphic design work, a girlfriend named Sarah who actually remembered my birthday. I called my mother once a month because it felt like the right thing to do. She'd ask how I was doing in that vague, polite way, and then spend 40 minutes talking about Daniel. His new house. His promotion. His perfect wife, Jennifer. I'd learned to let it roll off me. Or at least I thought I had. Then one Tuesday in October, my mother called at 7 in the morning. I almost didn't answer because she never called that early. But something made me pick up. Honey. Her voice sounded different. Smaller. Mom? What's wrong? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, trying to compose herself. I went to the doctor yesterday. They found something. My stomach dropped. What kind of something? Breast cancer. Stage 3. They want to start treatment right away. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Where's Daniel? Another pause. He's busy with work. You know how demanding his job is. Of course. Daniel was always busy when things got hard. I need help, she said, and I could hear how much it cost her to admit it. With appointments and treatment and just everything. I can't do this alone. I wanted to ask why she wasn't calling Daniel first. Why I was always the backup plan. But I heard the fear in her voice and I couldn't do it. I'll be there this weekend, I said. We'll figure it out. Thank you, honey. I knew I could count on you. She hung up and I sat there holding my phone, staring at the wall. Sarah came out of the bathroom, saw my face and asked what was wrong. I told her about the cancer, about my mother needing help. What about your brother? She asked. He's busy, I said automatically, the way I'd been saying it my whole life. Sarah looked at me with that expression she got when she was trying not to say what she was really thinking. You're going to go take care of her, aren't you? She's my mother. She's also the woman who forgot your birthday for 18 years. I remember. Do you? Sarah sat down next to me. Because every time you talk about your family, you make excuses for her. For both of them. I didn't have an answer for that. So I just kissed her forehead and started packing a bag. That Saturday, I drove the 2 hours to my mother's house. Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway. I let myself in with the key she'd mailed me years ago, the one I'd never actually used. The house looked the same as it always had. Pictures of Daniel everywhere. His high school football jersey framed on the wall. His college diploma. His wedding photo in the place of honor on the mantle. I found exactly 2 pictures of me. One from my high school graduation, half hidden behind a plant. Another from some random Christmas, tucked in the back of a shelf. My mother was in the living room, sitting on the couch looking smaller than I remembered. She stood when she saw me and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You came. Of course I came. She hugged me, and I felt how thin she'd gotten. How fragile. Where's Daniel? I asked, even though I already knew. He has a big presentation at work next week. He'll come when he can. I nodded, biting back the things I wanted to say. We sat down and she explained the treatment plan. Aggressive chemotherapy, radiation, possible surgery. She'd start chemo the following week and needed someone to drive her to appointments, help her at home when the side effects hit. I can take time off work, I said. Stay here for a while. Relief washed over her face. Are you sure? I know you have your business. I'm sure. What I didn't say was that Daniel probably could have taken time off too. That his job wasn't more important than mine, just more important to her. After we talked through all the logistics, I went upstairs to my old bedroom. It looked exactly like I'd left it when I moved out at 18. Same bed, same desk, same posters on the walls. Frozen in time, like a museum exhibit of a childhood that never really mattered. I walked down the hall and looked into Daniel's old room. It had been completely transformed into a craft room. Sewing machine, fabric, storage bins. My mother's hobby space. I stood there looking at the room that used to be his, understanding the metaphor. Daniel got to evolve, to be remembered and celebrated and then repurposed into something she loved. I just got preserved. Forgotten but not quite discarded. That night, I made dinner while my mother rested. We ate in silence, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space between us. Thank you for coming, she said finally. For helping me. You're my mom, I said. Of course I'm going to help you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've always been the dependable one. I wanted to tell her that dependable was just another word for taken for granted. That I'd spent my entire life being reliable because unreliable was already taken by her favorite son. But she looked so tired, so scared, that I just squeezed back and said nothing. Over the next 3 weeks, I drove her to appointments, picked up prescriptions, researched treatment options, organized her medical records. I put my work on hold. Told Sarah I didn't know when I'd be back. Daniel called twice. Both times, he talked to my mother for 10 minutes and then had to go. Then came my mother's birthday. I took the day off from everything. Bought her favorite flowers. Made reservations at the restaurant she loved, the one with the wheelchair-accessible entrance because the treatment was already making her weak. We sat by the window, and I watched her pick at her food. She'd lost her appetite, lost weight, but she smiled and thanked me and said it was a lovely day. What she didn't say was that she was waiting for Daniel to call. I watched the clock. 6 p.m. 7 p.m. 8 p.m. Every time her phone buzzed, her face lit up, and every time it wasn't him, something dimmed behind her eyes. Finally, at 8:30, she picked up her phone and typed out a message. I watched her delete it and rewrite it 3 times. Finally, she sent it. Missing you today. Hope you're well. We sat in silence. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast she almost knocked over her water glass. She read the message, and I watched her face do something I'd seen 1,000 times. That expression when she worked to hide disappointment. When she convinced herself that whatever crumb she got was enough. She typed something back, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, she just sent a heart emoji and put the phone face down on the table. He's busy, she said to me, to herself, to no one. Always so much going on. I didn't ask what he said. I didn't need to. We finished dinner and I drove her home. Helped her into the house, into bed. She thanked me again, told me I was a good son, and closed her eyes. I went downstairs and sat in the dark living room, surrounded by pictures of Daniel, and pulled out my phone. Opened the message she'd sent him. His response was still there in her thread. Happy birthday, Mom. Crazy busy. We'll call soon. 8 words. 8 words for the woman who'd built her whole world around him. I put my phone away and looked around at the shrine she'd made to my brother. Every trophy, every achievement, every moment of his life carefully preserved and displayed. I thought about my room upstairs. Unchanged, unvisited, unmissed. And I realized something that made my chest hurt. She wasn't just my mother. She was a woman who'd spent 30 years waiting for a son who was never going to show up. A woman who'd taught one child that his presence was a gift and the other that his absence didn't matter. And I was the one standing in Daniel's shadow, wondering if I'd always be the backup plan. The second choice. The son she called when the golden child was too busy to answer. I sat there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and understood that the next few months were going to break something inside me. I just didn't know if it would break me open or break me apart. Chemotherapy doesn't just take your hair. It takes your dignity, your strength, your hope. And I watched it take all of that from her, one treatment at a time, while the rest of the world moved on like nothing had changed. 3 months. That's how long I'd been living in my mother's house when I stopped recognizing my own life. My apartment sat empty 2 hours away. My freelance clients had moved on to other designers. Sarah's texts had gone from concerned to frustrated to eventually just silent. I'd become invisible in a different way now. Not overlooked, but consumed. Every day was the same rhythm. Wake up at 6 to check if she'd made it through the night without complications. Help her to the bathroom. Make breakfast she couldn't eat. Drive to appointments with doctors who spoke in percentages and survival rates. Come home. Give medications. Watch her sleep. Repeat. The first time she got sick from the chemo, really sick, it was 3 in the morning. I heard her calling my name, weak and desperate. I found her on the bathroom floor, too weak to get up, surrounded by her own vomit. I cleaned her up, changed her clothes, held her hair back, what was left of it, while she cried and apologized and begged me not to tell Daniel because she didn't want him to see her like this. Even then, even there, on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., she was protecting his image of her. I called the oncologist. Drove her to the ER. Sat in those fluorescent-lit waiting rooms that smell like antiseptic and desperation while they ran tests and adjusted medications and told me this was normal, this was part of the process. We got home at noon. I had 17 missed calls from clients. I didn't call any of them back. Sarah called that night. I was sitting in my mother's kitchen, staring at a pile of medical bills I didn't know how to pay. I miss you, she said. When are you coming home? I don't know. It's been 3 months. I know. Does she even appreciate what you're doing? Does she thank you? I looked through the doorway at my mother sleeping on the couch, bald and frail and frightened. She's dying, Sarah. And you're dying with her. Can't you see that? I couldn't answer because she was right. I was disappearing into this. Becoming nothing but a caretaker, an errand runner, a sun-shaped object that existed only to serve. I can't do this anymore, Sarah said quietly. I love you, but I can't be in a relationship with someone who's never actually here. I understand. Do you? Because you sound like you don't care. I'm just tired. You're always tired. You're always there. You're always putting her first. She has cancer. And what about you? What about us? I didn't have an answer that would satisfy either of us, so I said nothing. The silence stretched between us until she finally said goodbye and hung up. I sat there in the kitchen holding my dead phone, feeling nothing. I'd become so numb to my own needs that losing the person I loved barely registered. It was just one more thing I didn't have time to feel. The next morning, I got a text from Daniel. Coming by Sunday. Taking Mom to lunch. He showed up at 11 with expensive flowers and a big smile. My mother's face transformed when she saw him. She sat up straighter, smiled wider, became animated in a way she never was with just me. They talked for 2 hours while I made lunch in the kitchen, listening to him tell stories about work, about Jennifer, about their vacation plans. My mother laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, looked at him like he'd hung the moon. Before he left, Daniel took photos with her, posted them on social media with a caption about spending quality time with his hero. Within an hour, the post had 100 likes. After he drove away, my mother was energized. She talked about him for the rest of the day. How successful he was. How good he looked. How lucky she was to have such a wonderful son. I'd been there for 93 days straight. He'd been there for 2 hours. That night, Daniel sent me a text. "Thanks for holding down the fort, man. I know it's a lot." Then he Venmo'd me $200 with a note that said, "For gas and stuff." I stared at that transaction for a long time. $200. Like that covered months of my life. Like he could buy his way out of actually showing up. I wanted to throw my phone through the wall. Instead, I transferred the money back with a note that just said, "Keep it." He didn't respond. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. My mother had another scan, the one that would tell us if the treatment was working. I sat in the oncologist's office while he pulled up images on his computer screen, his face carefully neutral. "The cancer has spread to her lymph nodes. We need to adjust the treatment plan and discuss more aggressive options." My mother started crying. I held her hand and asked the right questions and nodded at the right times, but inside I was screaming. In the parking lot, I helped her into the car and then sat in the driver's seat, unable to start the engine. My phone rang. Sarah's name lit up the screen. I answered. "I can't do this anymore," she said, no preamble, no softness. "Tried. I really tried. But you're never coming back, are you?" "Sarah, I just got out of an appointment. The cancer spread. I can't do this right now." "You can never do this. That's the problem. There's always something with her, and there's never anything with us. She's dying. And I'm leaving. I'm done waiting for you to choose me." She hung up. I sat in that parking lot, surrounded by other people's cars and other people's problems, and something inside me shattered. I screamed. Actually screamed, both hands on the steering wheel, until my throat was raw and my mother knocked on the window asking if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said, wiping my face. "Just stressed." She got quiet. "You should go home. Back to your life. I can manage." "With what?" "You can't drive. You can barely walk some days. Daniel can help more." I laughed, this bitter, broken sound. "Can he? Because I've been here for 3 months and he's visited twice. He's busy with work. So was I. I had a life too. A girlfriend. Clients. A whole existence that I put on hold because you needed me." She looked down at her hands. "I never asked you to do that. You didn't have to ask. You just assumed I would. You always assume I will because I'm the dependable one, right? The easy one. The one who doesn't need anything. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is that I've given up everything and you still light up more when Daniel walks in the room for 2 hours than you do when I'm here every single day." She was crying now. I was crying. We were both falling apart in a hospital parking lot and I couldn't stop the words from coming. "Do you have any idea what it's like? To love someone who's always wishing you were someone else?" "I don't wish that." "Yes, you do. Every time you tell another story about Daniel. Every time you make excuses for why he's not here. Every time you thank me like I'm doing you a favor instead of being your son." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I know I failed you," she said quietly. "I've always known. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because knowing and changing are different things, and she'd never changed." We drove home in silence. I helped her inside, got her settled, and then went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed I'd slept in as a child, in this house where I'd never quite belonged, and I made a decision. I wasn't staying for her anymore. I wasn't staying for her approval or her gratitude or the hope that maybe someday she'd love me the way she loved Daniel. I was staying because leaving would make me just like them. And I didn't want to be that person. That night, Jennifer called. Daniel's wife. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "I need to tell someone," she said. "I can't keep this secret anymore." She told me everything. The affair. The other woman. The baby on the way that Daniel wanted nothing to do with. The divorce papers she'd just been served. "Your mom doesn't know," Jennifer said. "Daniel made me promise not to tell her. He doesn't want to stress her out during treatment." I sat there listening to the golden child's life fall apart, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just exhaustion. "I'm sorry," I said, because I was. After she hung up, I walked downstairs. My mother was asleep on the couch, her wig crooked, her face peaceful for the first time in days. I could tell her. Could shatter the illusion. Could finally make her see that her perfect son was just as flawed and selfish as any of us. But looking at her there, so small and sick and afraid, I couldn't do it. She was dying. And the truth about Daniel wouldn't change that. It would just give her one more thing to grieve. My phone buzzed. Daniel texting. Can't make it this weekend. Work thing came up. I deleted the message before she could wake up and ask about it. I'd spent my whole life competing with a ghost. It was time to stop. I sat down in the chair across from her and watched her sleep, understanding something I should have understood years ago. I wasn't doing this for her love. I was doing it because somewhere in all of this, I'd become the person she never taught me to be. The one who stays when staying is hard. The one who shows up when everyone else disappears. I'd never be her favorite, but I'd be the one she could count on. And maybe that was enough. Hospice came on a Tuesday. That's when we knew there was no more fighting. Only time. Only whatever moments we had left to say the things we'd spent a lifetime avoiding. The nurse was kind. She explained how it would work. The hospital bed they'd bring. The medications for pain. The signs to watch for as the end approached. My mother sat on the couch listening, nodding, pretending to be brave while her hands shook in her lap. After the nurse left, I asked if she wanted me to call Daniel. Not yet, she said. I don't want to worry him. Even then, even at the end, she was still protecting him. I moved into her house completely. There was no point in keeping my apartment anymore. No client work to go back to. No relationship waiting for me. Just this. Just her. Just these final months. Something shifted between us in those weeks. Maybe it was the proximity to death that stripped away pretense. Maybe it was just exhaustion. But we started talking. Really talking. Not the surface conversations we'd had my whole life, but the deep, honest ones we'd always been too afraid to have. Late one night, she couldn't sleep. The pain was manageable, but the fear wasn't. I sat beside her bed and she asked me about my childhood. What was your favorite birthday? I looked at her, surprised. You really want to know? I do. I don't think I had one. Not a favorite. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I know. No, I don't think you do. She opened her eyes and looked at me. I'm sorry I made you invisible. I'm sorry I gave Daniel everything and left you with scraps. I'm sorry I only saw you when there was no one else to see. The words I'd waited 30 years to hear. They should have felt like victory. Instead, they just felt sad. Why? I asked. Why was it always him? She was quiet for a long time. Your father died when Daniel was 5. You weren't born yet. And Daniel looked so much like him. Acted like him. Every time I looked at your brother, I saw the man I'd lost. It felt like having a piece of him back. And what did you see when you looked at me? Someone who didn't need me the way Daniel did. Someone who was fine on their own. She reached for my hand. I know that's not true now. I know I convinced myself of a lie because it was easier than admitting I was failing you. You didn't fail me. You just loved him more. I loved you differently. I loved you poorly. But I loved you. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. Part of me always would. But love without action is just a word, and she'd spent my whole life proving that words meant nothing. The next day, I was cleaning out a closet and found a box. Inside were cards. Every birthday card I'd ever made her. Every Mother's Day drawing. Every school award certificate. Things I thought she'd thrown away. You kept these, I said, bringing them to her. She smiled, tired and genuine. Of course I kept them. I kept everything. But you never told me. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I had all this evidence of you trying to reach me and I kept missing it. So I hid them. Like if I didn't see them, I didn't have to face what I'd done. I sat on the edge of her bed, holding a card I'd made when I was 7. Crayon hearts and the words I love you mom in my careful child handwriting. I see you now, she said. I'm sorry it took dying to do it. It wasn't enough. It didn't erase the past. But it was something. I know, I said. Daniel finally came when she was moved to full hospice care. His marriage was falling apart. Jennifer had told my mother everything before he could control the narrative. The affair. The baby. The divorce. My mother was devastated, but too weak to confront him the way she would have when she was healthy. Instead, she just looked at him with this profound sadness. He tried to hug her. She let him, but there was no warmth in it. That night, Daniel and I stood in the kitchen while my mother slept. He looked exhausted. Broken. Nothing like the golden child who'd floated through life on charm and good looks. I didn't know it would be this bad, he said. What? The cancer or your life? He flinched. Both. Where have you been, Daniel? Not just these last few months. The last few years. The last decade. Where have you been? I couldn't handle it. Sickness, death, all of this. I just couldn't. You never had to handle anything. That was always your privilege. You think my life has been easy? Compared to mine? You got everything. Love, attention, excuses. I got the leftovers and was expected to be grateful. He was quiet for a moment. She called me her hero. Do you know how much pressure that is? To be someone's whole world? No, but I know what it's like to be no part of it. We stood in silence, two brothers who'd never really known each other, bound together by a woman who'd loved us both wrong. The next day, my mother asked to speak to Daniel alone. I left them in her room and sat outside, listening through the crack in the door. I made you this way, she told him. I gave you everything and taught you nothing. I let you think the world revolved around you, and now you're learning it doesn't. I'm sorry for that. Mumta, don't. Let me finish. I'm proud of you, but not for the reasons I should be. I'm proud that you're my son, but I'm not proud of the man I helped you become. You're selfish, Daniel. And that's my fault. I heard him crying. Heard her crying. Heard things that should have been said decades ago finally being spoken into the space between them. When he came out, his eyes were red. He looked at me and said, "She wants to talk to you." I went in and sat beside her bed. She looked so small. So tired. "I need you to forgive me," she said. "I'm working on it. That's all I can ask." She took my hand. "You were always enough. I just couldn't see it. You were so strong, so capable, so independent. I thought that meant you didn't need me. But you did. And I wasn't there." "No, you weren't. But you're here now. When I need you most. That makes you the better son. It's not a competition. It never should have been. But I made it one, and you won by refusing to play." She died 3 days later. Daniel was there, but he'd stepped out to take a call when it happened. It was just me and the hospice nurse. I held her hand and watched her take her last breath, and I felt relief mixed with grief in a way I didn't know how to process. At the funeral, Daniel gave a eulogy full of stories I didn't recognize. Memories that sounded beautiful but never happened. People cried and hugged him and told him how lucky he was to have had such a close relationship with his mother. I didn't speak. My grief was private. My relationship with her was too complicated to summarize in front of strangers. But people came up to me afterward. Neighbors. Her friends from church. Her coworkers from before she got sick. "Your mother talked about you all the time," they said. "How proud she was. How you dropped everything to take care of her." I was surprised. She'd never said those things to me. But apparently she'd said them to everyone else. The lawyer read the will 2 weeks later. She'd split everything equally between Daniel and me. But there was a letter addressed only to me. I read it alone in my empty apartment, the one I'd barely lived in for 6 months. "You gave me something Daniel never could. Your time. Your presence. Your forgiveness before I deserved it. That made you the richer son. I wish I'd told you that when I could still say it to your face. I wish I'd been the mother you deserved instead of the one you got. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being the man I failed to raise. You saved me not from cancer, but from dying completely alone and unloved. That's a gift I can never repay." I folded the letter and put it in my wallet. I still carry it. 6 months later, my life looks different. I'm back to work, thriving actually. The time away gave me perspective. I date someone new now. Someone who understands loyalty and doesn't resent my capacity to care. Daniel and I text occasionally. Cordial but distant. He's trying to be a better father to the child he didn't want at first. Trying to be a better person. I hope he succeeds. I visit my mother's grave once a month. Bring flowers. Talk to her like she's listening. "I don't know if I ever really forgave you," I tell the headstone. "But I'm trying to forgive myself for staying. For caring when you didn't seem to." The truth is, caregiving wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing I've ever done. Staying when everyone else left. Loving when it wasn't returned. Choosing dignity over bitterness. My mother chose my brother for 30 years. But in the end, I chose to be her son anyway. Not for her. For me. Because the person you are in the hard moments is who you really are. And I wanted to be someone I could respect. I was never the favorite. But I was the one who stayed. And maybe that's its own kind of victory. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. Giving up 6 months of my life to care for someone who never quite loved me the way I needed. The answer is no. Because I didn't do it for her approval. I did it because walking away would have made me like them. And I'm not like them. I'm the son who showed up. The one who stayed when staying was hard. The one who loved imperfectly but completely. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Sometimes the invisible child becomes the unforgettable adult. This was my story. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. I share real stories about real family struggles every day here on my Reddit diaries. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you been the one who stayed when everyone else left? Drop your story in the comments below. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. I'll see you in the next one.